Yes. So let's see, it's right at 7 o'clock. Tell me what you want to do and how you want to do it.
Yeah, okay. So yep, it looks like we are at the start of the hour. So I just have a few things I want to touch on before we start the meeting, and then I'm gonna let Paige give a brief introduction for you, and then you can go ahead and get started.
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. Guys, just before we get going here, I did want to note that dues for our club are due on October 15th. So those will be, again, $11 for the semester or $20 for the year. All the information on that is in our last email on who to Venmo. And if you can't pay with Venmo, cash and check also work. So just want to touch on that and make sure you guys know the deadline for our dues. And then also as well, Jacob is having a mental health event here soon. We're going to be doing a mental health hike at High Banks, and it's going to be on October 10th at 9 a.m. So I just kind of wanted to pop in here and make sure you guys are aware of that. Should be really fun. We're going to try and get a carpool together, but we'll let you guys know more information on that when the time comes. But yeah, I'll hand it off to you, Paige.
Today. She's a professor here at Ohio State, so a lot of you guys will probably have her for one of your classes. And she also has experience with the interview process and the admission process for Ohio State's veterinary school. So she is going to talk a little bit about that today. If you guys have questions during the presentation, just go ahead and type them in the chat, and then towards the end, we will answer all of those for you. So Dr. Grum, whenever you're ready.
Okay. First of all, thank you guys so much for inviting me. This is one of my favorite things to do, and I really appreciate it. I also get a chance to see you guys like faces and everything instead of the whole masky thing all day long, and I really like that too. Thank you for the introduction. I have been with Ohio State for 19 years. And I've been with Animal Sciences in the same office in Plum Hall for 17 of those years. I teach 5 classes. So most of you have been abused by me at some point. 2203, the systems introduction class, is one that I teach with Mike Cressman. And to tell you what a small world we have, Mike Cressman was one of my TAs when we had the contemporary issues class in person, and now he's my co-instructor, and I love it. It's just absolutely wonderful. He brings things to the class that other people can't, and it's wonderful. I also teach the second animal health class, which many of you have done or will be doing, and follow on from Liz Parker and Justin Kiefer for those. So basically your 2 health classes are both taught by veterinarians, and that hopefully brings a little more richness, brings a little bit more to the table. I have the 4005 class, which many of you are in currently, and it's moving along very, very well. Then there's non-ruminant nutrition. And for those of you who are like, oh God, nutrition, all your animals eat, so that it doesn't hurt to find out a little bit more. And 5032 is a very gentle class. And then the last one is the contemporary issues class, which I co-wrote with Steve Boyles, and we have a lot of fun teaching that. We just kind of go back and forth on that one. I had the pleasure of currently advising 59 students. My cap is 60, and so right now I'm just one under my cap, and that's going to change in December when a few of my students graduate. I spent 12 years on the committee that did interviews for OSU. We were supposed to rotate off every 3, so when they started looking at some of us and they said, Dr. Grum, you've been on for 12 years. Could you take a break, please? Because we got other people, and yeah, you're. And I said, sure, but can I still advise students on this kind of stuff? And they're like, duh. So this gives me a chance to talk to you guys about what we're really looking at with the application process, with the interview process, and what's going on with that. So one of the things I want you to do as upcoming potential veterinarians is I want you to, I guess, take the blinkers off take the blinders off, because many of you have this focus, this total focus on, I'm in college, I'm taking all the right classes, I'm going to vet school, and there we go. My goal is I'm going to vet school. Well, yeah, but not really. Okay. What we're really trying to do by going through vet school is to turn out great veterinarians. And we're not trying to turn out, vet students. We're trying to turn out veterinarians. So we have to see past vet school. We have to see past this, oh my God, I have to get into vet school. Yeah, you do. Okay. And that's going to be great. But it's really important that you remember that you have a plan and that you have a goal. So I want you to start very, very far in the future. For some of you, it's not that far. It's going to be 4 years. But for others, it's going to be further than that. And I want you to think about, why are you doing what you're doing? What's your goal? Why do you need to be a veterinarian instead of anything else you could do with animals? Because that may be one of the questions they're going to ask you, is why the DVM? You know, why do you have to be a veterinarian? And if you tell me, I love animals, I love people, I'm gonna hurt you through my mind. I will not hit you, but I will think about hitting you, because everyone loves animals. Unless you're an axe murderer or a lunatic, you love animals. So, okay, great. Why the veterinary degree? Why do you have to be a veterinarian? What does a veterinarian do? Many of you may just go, well, my aunt told me I'm great with animals, so I'm going to be a vet. Can we explore other opportunities? You know, there's plenty of room for you in veterinary medicine, but why do you want to do this? So I want you to start at the very end of the story. Why are you doing this? Is it because you want to be in a leadership position? Is it because you're a problem solver? Is it because you love medicine and you're excited by working with animals? Is it because you enjoy the human animal bond? You know, what is it? Do you like to do research? Why do you want to be a DVM? Because there's so many other things that you can do with or instead. Okay, so you need to figure out, why am I doing this? Then we can start working backwards. All right, so if I'm going to be a veterinarian, what attributes do I need to have to reach my goal? And attributes need to include things like, okay, I'm a good communicator. Are you a better communicator on paper, or are you a better communicator in person? That may help you decide where in veterinary medicine you're going. If you're better on paper, you may want to be involved in industry. You may be involved in teaching or research. If you're better one-on-one, you may also do well teaching, but clinical practice may be a good place for you. If you can't make a sentence to a person who's maybe a stranger and unfamiliar to you, clinical practice is not a good place for you. And so there are things that you need to realize about yourself. What do I do well? What do I not do well? You know, what are my ethics? How good am I where it comes to integrity? You know, if I see my best friend cheating on a test in vet school, am I going to turn him in or not? Well, that's a no-win answer, because you either lose the friendship or something. But where are my ethics? If somebody calls me out to euthanize their pony just because they're tired of it, what am I going to do? How am I going to handle that? So where are my ethics? Where are my interests? What do I care about? What am I good at? Am I good at art or music? I'll give you an example. I had a wonderful, wonderful interview with a person who ended up actually in my husband's class. My husband went to vet school as a second career. And so this woman, I asked her, you play French horn in an orchestra. You obviously have this fabulous musical talent. How is that going to help you as a veterinarian? And she said, well, as a musician, I have a trained ear. So I can hear rates, rhythms, sounds that other people may not be able to do. I think I'm going to be a really good cardiologist. And I was like, cool. She is now a cardiologist. She works at Washington State University and is fantastic. But she could see where her talents could apply as a veterinarian, because she knew what kind of veterinarian she wanted to be. She wanted to be a specialist, and she wanted to apply her talents. So start at the end. Why do I want to be a veterinarian? What is it about the DVM that nothing else can do for me like that? And then you'll back up and you'll say, okay, all of these attributes are what I need to become what I want to be. That's what you want to make really obvious in your application. Are you a good communicator? What's your empathy? What's your integrity? You know, those kinds of attributes, you want to bring those out. You want to show them in your application that you have all of these great attributes. How do you get them? You know, everybody's like, oh, I just need all kinds of experience. I need experience with horses. I need experience with zoo animals. I need experience. You also need to be a well-rounded person, because all of your zoo experience is not going to help you communicate with an owner who's freaking out or upset or angry or something like that. So you need to hone all of your skills. That includes being involved in the community. It includes being involved in a variety of other things too. You guys involved in pre-vet, this is fantastic. So get a leadership position, get something that you're doing, learn to organize stuff. Because if you're going to be a boss, if you're going to be in charge, if you're going to be involved in taking care of other people and other people's animals, you need to be in a leadership position. College is a fantastic place to practice this. You have a safety net under you that is fantastic. There are so many people that want you to succeed and be able to move forward, that you have lots of people who will catch you if you fall. The real world doesn't do that. Many of you have been out there. You have jobs out there. You know they don't care. If you fail, you're screwed. It's over. Someone else will take your place. So in college is a great place to practice a lot of things that the real world is not going to let you practice as much as they expect you to already know what you're doing. So, you know, practice those skills that and communication, empathy, leadership. These are all things that are super important. But again, where are you going? Keep your eyes on the prize. Let me tell you a short story. Once upon a time, I was involved in a seminar series, a weekend seminar series, and it was for a different purpose. But one of the things they did with us, and we had 150 people in this room, was they took us into this big open room and they said, okay, your goal is to go from this side of the room to that side of the ballroom in a unique fashion. That's your goal. How you're going to get there is just mechanics, but that's your goal. Keep your eye on the goal. How are you going to do this? And they basically said, you have to, each one of you has to cross the room differently. I'm looking around, there's 150 people in this room. How are we going to have 150 different ways of getting to that goal? I thought, this is stupid. This is ridiculous. Well, it ended up actually working. They said that, you know, if you get to the other end, but you've done something that someone else did, they can send you back and make you try out again. And that happened a lot. But their point was, keep your eye on the goal. What you have to do to get there is mechanics. So if you're so focused on how many hours of equine experience do I have, but you've lost sight of your goal of why do I want to be a veterinarian, it's not going to work out for you. You're going to be one of those people who gets into school and goes, wow, why am I here? You shouldn't have to ask, why am I here? Once you start the program, you know why you're there. And once you start the program, it's so cool because you know what your graduation date is. It's a finite program. You start on, say, August 21st of this year. 4 years later, on May 3rd, for example, you're graduating. You may even want to keep a little sheet, you know, a calendar, and tick off the days. I did. I had a little calendar over my desk, and there were days where I was like, 785 days to go, 784 days to go, because they were long days. There are other days that I'm like, wow, how did I become a third-year student? So keep your eyes on the prize, develop the experiences, the attributes, take the opportunities to get you to that goal. Because those things you put together in your application are the mechanics of how you get through vet school to your goal. Vet school is not your goal. Becoming a veterinarian is your goal. So one of the things that we do is we have a tendency to just get so laser focused on getting into school, we forget why we're going. And just keep your eyes on the prize. And I know I've kind of beat that, but I really want you to think about that. Before I get too far, does anybody have any questions that they would like specifically addressed? Because I can chat about this for quite a while, and I want to focus on what you want to know. So if you want to either unmute or put something in the chat and we can answer it, whatever you want to do. So feel free to put in questions and stuff as we go. Jacob, I'm excited that you guys are doing this wellness thing. Okay, I love that, because one of the biggest problems we have in our profession right now is wellness. And I think one of the reasons is because a lot of us have lost sight of why we're doing what we're doing. And so then we get frustrated and we get irritated and we start taking it out on other people or ourselves in unhealthy ways. And this has been going on for a long time. Okay, I lost 3 of my own classmates to suicide. I almost lost a 4th. And we graduated a long time ago. So this isn't new, but what's really cool is we're actually talking about it. And I think the fact that you guys are addressing it, paying attention to that, is super important. This is a huge leadership profession and there's a lot of pressure on you, okay? But once you get into school, I want you to remember 2 very important things. And you're gonna look at me like, the woman is insane. No. Remember, I've been out for a long time and I've seen many, many, many classes as well as my own students go through. The first equation you need to learn once you get into vet school, and for some of you, this is going to be terrifying. Are you ready? C equals DVM. Just freaking pass. All right, except for those of you going on to internships and residencies, no one will ever ask your GPA in vet school, ever. I swear. I have had so many, they don't care, okay? They care about what kind of person you are. They care about your skills. They care about your attributes. They do not care about your grade point average. I remember when I got my exam back, my final exam back from my neurology professor, and he handed it to me and he goes, and at the time my last name was Hill, and he goes, soon to be Dr. Hill, you're not going to be a neurologist, are you? And I said, no, sir. And he said, good. That's not my thing. That's fine. Just pass. The other thing that you need, because that way you can do other stuff. You can connect with other human beings. You can do stuff. You can be involved in things, because you're not so freaked out about your grades that you forget to learn about your profession and life and being involved, because this is your career. This isn't just a stopping point. The other thing that you need to remember is the people who get straight A's tend to go into teaching and research. The people who get B's end up working for the people who get C's, because the people who get C's end up being much more well-rounded, calmer students, not so freaked out by every single grade and every single point. And the B people are like, wow, I want to be like you, and they end up being their employees. I've seen it for 35 years. This is what happens. And you might be looking at me and go, okay, old lady, but you're our instructor. Yes, I graduated number 6 in my class. And guess what? I'm in teaching and research. Yes, I wish I had slowed down, calmed down, and enjoyed things a lot more than I did. Flip side of that is I really love my current job, and I don't think I'd be here without all the other experiences I had. But one of the things that was really important, and sometimes I lost sight of why I was doing it, and I got really involved in the grades and the classes and not so involved in becoming a professional, not until the end. My senior year clinics, oh my God, that was like super happy. So that was wonderful. But what else can I tell you? Someone should ask me questions, because otherwise I will just babble at you.
Hey, I have a question.
Wonderful. Hi, Kelsey.
Hi. I'm a non-traditional student. I'm actually working in the Air Force right now. So I'm kind of trying to figure out, I have basically 2 years before my contract is up. So I'm kind of just trying to figure out what to do with my time. I kind of wanted to know how you see non-traditional students.
Oh my gosh. You are so exciting for the profession. 60% of every graduating class is going to go into private practice. Okay, and that's fine. That's good. There's plenty of room. But 40% aren't. And many of that 40% are people like you who come in with a completely different background, and you bring so much to the profession that helps enrich it. I mean, veterinary medicine started out as a guardian of public health, food safety, and zoonosis surveillance. Now we include bioterrorism surveillance in that as well. And so when you go back to its roots, people like you who come in with a different background and a different interest are really, really good for enriching the profession for what it actually originally started as, and where it can go with that. That means often many of you guys end up going into international work. You go into One Health work with human physicians and with researchers in different areas. And is really exciting. So you bring some really cool things to the table that just helps expand and enrich the profession. Your backgrounds are are magnificent. There's a fourth year student right now is one of my TAs and one of my old advisees. And she's ROTC straight on and doing all kinds of stuff. She did her internship with military dogs at let me think, it's in Maryland. I remember that. And I can't remember the name of the camp there, but they do gunpowder, Maryland, and they do quite a bit with the dogs there. And there's so many other things that you can do. I have another former advisee who is in the Coast Guard, and what she does on the weekends is she fixes Huey helicopters. And so you bring in this richness and interest that expands the profession. So I think non-traditional students are a huge benefit. I really do.
Thanks.
You're very welcome, and I'm excited to see you. Yeah, go for it. One of my best instructors spent 10 years in the Peace Corps in Africa before he came back to go to vet school. And nothing fluffed this guy. I mean, he'd seen everything. He'd been attacked by elephants. He'd been, he'd had to spend the night in the tree sometimes, so he didn't get chewed on by things. I mean, he had, students were like, yeah, whatever. After you've been chased by an elephant and almost killed, students are really kind of easy. He was the most relaxed, calm instructor I had, and we learned a lot from him. But he brought those attributes with him from what he had learned in another world. It was great. Yeah. What else?
I was wondering if you could touch on a little bit what makes someone a competitive candidate, and then also if you could talk a little bit about the interview process for those of us that have just
yes. For those of you who have just hit submit and are now terrified that you can't get the dang thing back until, yeah, I know. Okay, so what makes a competitive candidate? What they're going to do with your application is it's going to go through a set of filters. The first thing that happens when you hit submit, the first filter is your application complete? And you're like, are you serious? Are there people who send in an application that's not complete? Yes. And so those guys are off the table. And that's going to be about 5% of the applicants. So the pool narrows a little bit. The next filter is going to be the objective scores. All right. This is going to be made up of 4 subscores. Subscore number 1 is your overall GPA, and that's everything you've done since high school, including CCP classes, including things that you've done at other schools. You put all those transcripts together into a barrel, and they pull out a single GPA. That's one subscore. The second subscore is what they call your last 30 or your last 45. It depends on the school. But what they're doing is they're looking at your most recent year of coursework to see what kind of student are you currently. Many times you guys, your first semester with Gen Chem and math, and it's like, ew, and tends to be crappy. They're not too excited about that, because what they want to see is who are you now, because that's who's coming into school. And so they look at your last year of classes and grades more critically. So that's a second subscore. The third subscore is your science and math, your kind of prerequisite GPA, because the things that they really want you to have taken, such as, microbiology, biochemistry, your communication class, your physiology class, that stuff. So they're going to look at that as a subscore. The fourth subscore doesn't apply to all of the schools, and that's your GRE. Some schools want you to take it, some don't. So if they want it, they'll count it in that objective set of scores. If they don't, then oh well, okay. So one of the things to look at is, do the schools I'm applying to care if I take the GRE? If none of them want the GRE, don't waste $200 and half a day of your time, at least once or twice, okay? But if they do need it, then you need to take it and study for it like you did for the ACT or the SAT, because that's really all it pretty much is. So that's the next filter, is this whole objective score. Generally, if out of all of the applicants that they have, if you score in the top half of those applicants that year, then your file goes on to what they call the file review. In the file review, they're going to look at your experiences. They're going to look at your volunteer and community service. They're going to look at your letters of recommendation. They're going to look at your essay. And so these are all things that you're going to want to have well-rounded. Starting with your letters of recommendation, you have to have at least 3. Some schools need 4, especially if you're out of state. The first one needs to be from a veterinarian you've worked with, because they need to be able to talk about how you're going to be as a veterinarian. So make good relationships with your veterinarians and keep up with them, because one of them is going to need to write a letter for you, and it needs to be a strong, positive, supportive letter. You don't want one, well, I've known this applicant for 5 years, but I haven't seen her for 4. So you want to keep those relationships, make those relationships, keep those relationships. I know during COVID that was really hard to do. Okay, I know that. But now's the time to get back to that. The second letter needs to come from a professional. It's often a second veterinarian, but it can be anyone who's got some degrees behind their name. So, professors, research people, folks that other professionals that you're working with. And they're going to talk about what kind of a professional you're going to be. How's your integrity? How's your communication skills overall? What kind of a team player are you? That kind of stuff. The third letter needs to come from someone who is essentially a character reference, someone who knows you on your good days, your bad days. How do you do with stress? How do you do with unfamiliar situations? How do you deal with difficult people? Just kind of the things of life. And so that person should be someone you've known for a while. Often they're going to be coaches, Sunday school teachers, oh my gosh, all kinds of, maybe advisors who in different contexts, people you've babysat for, people you've worked for, former bosses. They don't have to have degrees. They don't have to have any kind of special title, but they should be someone who knows you well as a person. The fourth letter, typically most schools ask for that to be an academic reference. And so, most of you have really good opportunities to pick up somebody from that. And they'll just talk about, how are you as a student? Or are you someone who takes your studies seriously? Do you have a good work ethic? Or are you just kind of a goofball? So those are out there. Your essay is a weird piece. Many of you know that already. Some of you have had me take a look at your essay. Others have had other veterinarians do it. That's a really good idea. It's the weirdest essay you're going to write, because they want you to take the prompt, answer the prompt in the first couple of sentences, and then you can embellish on it. They want you totally to talk about you. So you're going to use I statements and I believe and I think and a lot of active verbs. You're not going to weave a pretty story like they have you do in English class. They don't want to go on a treasure hunt. These people are reading, these are veterinarians. They're reading 40 or 50 of these every cycle. They don't want to go looking for the nugget of joy at the end of your essay. Hit it at the front, embellish on it, be very, very self-focused. Okay, and it's a weird essay to write. Alexis asked, can a vet tech be your professional recommendation? I'm going to recommend against that. I'm going to recommend that your veterinary technicians that you work with are your character references, because they make really good character references. They've got you figured out. They know your personality. They know who you are. They make great character references. Bluntly, they don't have enough degrees behind their name to be a good professional reference. Okay. So, but character references, oh, heck yeah. They're really good. And many of those letters are very, very helpful. Yeah, oh, you're welcome. So the essay, that's something that you don't want to just write a draft and then send it in. For those of you who have played this do it several times game, once you've actually got your final draft and you hit submit, go back and read your first version. You will be either amused or horrified. I'm not sure which, but first drafts are usually a hot mess. And then once you hone it and whittle it and get it down to what you want, they're usually beautiful. And a couple of you, some of you have sent me yours when you finish them, and it's like, I get chills. I read that and I just go, oh, you nailed it. And it's so exciting. And so what about your experiences? You need experiences in 5 animal categories. Companion animal and pocket pet is one category. Equine is its own category. Livestock and poultry is its own category. Exotics and wildlife, non-domestics is its own category. And then the 5th category is research. If you have 3 of those categories that you have experience in, and you have at least 50 hours in each of those 3 that is focused experience, you're in very good shape. And that makes you a competitive candidate. They're going to score your application on breadth of experience. That's where those 5 categories come in. If you have all 5, hallelujah, but you need at least 3. All right, to be competitive, you need at least 3. If you tell me, well, I've worked, 1,600 hours in a small animal clinic, and that's what I've got. Well, okay, but you're not competitive, because your competition has done that, and they've done equine, and they've done livestock, and. Okay, so when they look at breadth of experience, you're going to get a 1, they will get a 5. So you want to be competitive on that. Now, where it's helpful to have so many hours in one clinic or something is the second score, which is depth of experience. They want to see, how hands-on did you get? Did you shadow? Ooh, that's not going to be good enough for the long term. Early experience, shadowing, great. Older, graduating senior, shadowing, no. They want to see that you haven't just held the paint on the wall and watched. They want to see that you got your hands dirty. Okay, you got in there. You helped in surgery, or you helped with, anesthesia, or you got in there and cleaned teeth, or you took blood, or you did something where you were physically involved and active in the process. Because they want to see people who jump in with both feet and get involved and do stuff, not people who go, oh, that looks interesting. Yeah, that's cute the first few times, but after that, it's fine when you're 16 and they won't let you do anything else. But, if you're 20, 21, 22, you're coming to the end of your college career and you're still standing there watching other people do things and your hands are still clean, you're not competitive. You may feel like you are, but you're not, because you got people around you who are diving in. So make the best of your experiences and just dive in like crazy. That shows up on depth of experience. That's really important. So breadth is one score, but depth is a different score. Okay. And some of you are so sweet. You'll say, well, I have this many 100 hours of experience, and that's really good. Please understand that my husband went into vet school with 96,000 hours of veterinary and animal experience. So you're not going to impress me with number of hours. I want to see how much breadth have you had, how much depth have you had in at least one of those experiences. The number of hours doesn't tell me how much work you did. It just tells me how many hours you spent standing there. But I want to know, how deep was your experience? How hands-on was it? and how many different experiences did you have. They want to know that you have explored the profession and you really know what you're getting into. So that's what we're looking at. Okay. So experience from the way of depth and breadth, essays, letters, and your other experiences like community service, things like that. They like to see leadership stuff. So those of you who have taken on TA ships, those of you who have taken on peer mentorships, things like that, those are really good. It shows a level of leadership and of interest and involvement and motivation that other people who are applying don't have. So that makes you a more competitive candidate as well. And then, so once all of those rubrics are scored on your file, if you end up in the top half of the people they did the file review, you're now in the top 25% of the applicants. You were in 100% when they did your GPA and objective check. You're in the top 50% at the file review, and they'll take the top half of those. So now you're in the top 25% of the applicants for those schools. And at that point, you're going to go to the interview. There are 4 types of interviews, if we want to call the first one a type. Type 1, what's that?
I actually had a question about not the interview, but the experience and the GPA.
Absolutely, go for it.
Ahead.
Yeah.
So how important is the GPA compared to real world experience? If I walk in with saying I've been in, 100x hours of this, and I have certifications in this and that, but my GPA is, 3.2 or something.
Okay, I need to address that. I think that's a really important question. If you have less than a 3.0 cumulative, there are 2 schools you can apply to. Well, maybe 3. I think Long Island University is not, they're brand new. They're not being so critical about GPA. Lincoln Memorial in Northern Tennessee and Midwest in Arizona will take less than a 3.0. Everyone else, no, and don't even turn it in, okay? Because they're going to slice you off at the knees. If you have a 3.0 or higher, you qualify. Now, that said, there is also an explanation statement. If your GPA has taken a serious hit, or you have some other things because of life happened to you. For example, one of my students was doing great until his parents declared bankruptcy, and they forced all 3 kids to come home and fix their financial issue. Well, his school took a pretty, his schoolwork took a pretty bad dive at that point. That wasn't his fault, but he needed to explain that. If you've had, open heart surgery, like one of my students did, or, other things that have happened to you, though, that's what the explanation statement is for. It is not for, I did bad in chemistry because I didn't like my professor. Wah. Okay, get over it. But if you do have some life experience and issues like that, that have completely kicked you on your butt and your GPA took a bad hit because of it, and then it's really hard to pull out of that again, that needs to go in the explanation statement, because they will look at that along with your grades. So that's where that goes. Generally, the objective scores count for about 40% of the total application score. The file review can be 60% for schools that don't do interviews, like Cornell. So that's one type. They don't do interviews, so the file review actually counts 60%. So that's huge. For other schools that do interviews, the percentage varies somewhat. It can be another 40, it could be 35, 45, it could be anywhere in that, depending on what the school does. So it can vary. But if you have something that has happened to you that has destroyed your GPA at some point, and you're trying to climb out of it, that needs to go in the explanation statement, because they will look at that as part of your initial filter. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does. But then just a follow-up question, then is 3.5 the goal? Is that like the competitive?
Right. Oh, I would say that once we get to, above like a 3.2, 3.3, we're paying too much attention to the numbers at that point, and we're worried about them too much. Once you're in that 3.2, 3.3 range, you're in a competitive place. Each school will publish what their average entrance GPA was, but please remember what an average is, okay? It's the average, or sometimes they publish the median. Well, that means half of their applicants are above that and half are below that. They don't publish the range. They just tell you, oh, well, we only took, our average was a 3.6 or 3.7. You're like, okay, but I happen to know your range was from here to here, okay? But they don't tell you that part. So I would say that if you're in the 3s, you should apply because you don't know what your competition's doing. So get in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, but if you're below a 3, you're really in a bad place. So that's something that needs work. Okay. Partially because, especially if it's in the sciences, because the veterinary program is a glorified science master's program. So if you're not any good at science, why are you going into a science master's program? It makes no sense. Okay. Now, if you're crap at major math, if calculus and above really doesn't work for you, go to veterinary medicine. We're not mathematicians, not for the most part anyway. But the life sciences need to work for you because the whole veterinary program is a life science program. So, if you're better at architecture or art or engineering, go do that. Okay. But a life science program is what you're getting into. So that needs to be pretty good. Okay. And they will look at your others, like your major GPA and your prerequisite GPA. And so they're looking at all of that. They're not just looking at the one. Okay. They're looking at several pieces of that. I hope that helps. Okay. So once you get to the interview, like I said, there's 4 interview types. There is the no interview, like Cornell. And so they put a lot of emphasis on your objective scores and your file review. Then there's the Ross type interview, which some of the schools do. It's very casual. You'll sit down over coffee or lunch with their designated interviewer in your geographical area, and you chat. You have a little conversation. You just talk about life, sunshine, stars, pets, something. I don't know. I have no idea how they score those interviews. They're very casual. They're very pleasant. It's usually about an hour or so. You just sort of hang out and talk. Okay, cool. I think they just want to make sure you're not psycho, that you're not talking about, weird stuff like, you're really excited about dissection because you like cutting up things and slicing into things and stuff, or whatever other weird shit goes on in people's interviews. I did have a very bizarre young man interview with me and my co-interviewer one time. He would have probably been kicked out of that interview. His name was Andy. I remember his name was Andy because he made a very big impression on me. And he was taught to make eye contact. And so while the rest of us just kind of watch the screen and we talk and we look at each other, he made eye contact through the entire interview like this. Okay, it was creepy beyond belief. My co-interviewer stopped looking at him and I'm like, oh my God. And so I asked him, so what if this isn't your year? What's your plan? You're going to reapply, things like that. And he goes, you can't get rid of me. I won't go away. I'm like, yeah, you will, because we're done with you. You're bananas. People like that, yeah, they're not going to pass any of those interviews. Let's see, let me check. I'm going to chat real quick. What is one specific experience that makes an applicant unique? Oh, there isn't anything one specific, but things that help you stand out. And things like study abroads, do that. Things like time in 4-H or FFA, or being involved in team sports, especially if you've taken a leadership role, that really makes you stand out. Were you team captain or did you just stand there watching the ball go by? And you've seen them, right? Like little kids that play soccer and they all just sort of go with Brownian motion across the field, but there's no one real leader. They're all just sort of following the ball. Or softball practice, that's my other favorite, where you have the outfielders are sitting there, watching butterflies and looking for 4-leaf clovers out in the field and stuff. Were you that teammate, or were you the one that, is out there at shortstop hollering at somebody? Okay. Or were you team captain? Were you involved somehow? Okay. What if I get super nervous in the interview? Oh, okay. Yeah. This happens a lot. All right. And ladies, we have a tendency to blotch. Okay. So one of the little things I encourage at interviews is that you wear something with a higher collar. Don't wear a plunging neckline, because your blotchiness is going to show up big time unless you have dark skin. And so you're going to look like you have disease because you're freaking out. And that's okay, but it's probably not how you want to be remembered. Guys, you don't tend to blotch as much. All right, but your ears turn red. And so, just kind of be aware. It's okay. And practicing helps. Will they look at high school extracurriculars and leadership, or just college? Put everything on there. If they want to look at high school, if they want to look for especially leadership, community service, teamwork kind of stuff, they're going to look all the way back to high school. Yeah, just put all that in there. And then can you put high school experience on the application? Maybe if you found out your why in high school, can you write about it? Heck yeah. Oh yeah, because that made you who you are. All right. But please don't use icky sentences like, working for Dr. XYZ made me the person I am today. These are graduated veterinarians who are going to be looking at you. They're 26 to 56 years old. And they look back at 21-year-old you and go, you're the person you are today. Congratulations, you got 40 years ahead of you. That kind of a blech statement doesn't mean anything. All right. So there's, how do you not completely repeat your resume during your interview? Oh, they don't give you time. Okay. They really don't give you time. So let me tell you about the interviews. All right. And maybe this will help with some of those questions, because they're really good questions. All right. So the second type of interview, the Ross interview, which I told you about, you just sit and talk over coffee. They're looking to make sure you're just not a crazy person. The third type of interview is what a lot of the schools, Virginia, Maryland is doing this. All of the Canadian schools do this. Many of the overseas schools do this, and the Texas schools are going to be doing this, and there's a few others. And these are called the multiple mini interviews. They sort of follow the Casper tests, if any of you have done the Casper tests online. And what they're doing is they give you the opportunity to show off your attributes in different scenarios. Okay, and somebody asked, how important is it to have animal type leadership instead of just leadership? Not at all. Leadership is leadership. Okay, because you're involved with people and they want to see how well do you people. So anything is fine. All right. So with these Casper tests or with these multiple mini interviews, what they do is they give you a series of anything from 6 to 12 scenarios. And they're testing 2 different personal attributes in each of those scenarios. And they're mixing and matching among them. And these are not things that ask you specific knowledge or specific veterinary knowledge, because they should apply and should be doable scenarios by anyone, whether you come from a large animal or small animal or research background or non-traditional. They want to be able to ask questions of people so that anyone could answer them. Okay, so they're not going to ask you, how do you do a TPLR? But they may ask you something like, Mr. and Mrs. Smith call you out to a farm, and their daughter, whose 4-H pony has been living there for 20 years, is now just a lawnmower. They don't want it anymore. It's perfectly healthy, but they're done with it. They want you to euthanize it. What do you do? And so you have a minute or so to read the scenario, a couple minutes to think about it. And then you go in and you have 5 to 8 minutes to play it out. The people who are scoring you are not going to give you any feedback. They have a rubric in front of them. They will score you. They will thank you. You finish, you go on to the next one. You're going to feel weird because you're waiting for feedback. You're waiting for that human interaction. You're not really going to get it. So you come out of those scenarios going, what was that? I don't know. But you answer them to the best of your ability and be honest. All right. There are typically ethical questions or integrity questions or something in that range. And they just want to understand more about who you are as a person. Okay. The neat thing about the multi-minis is that they're kind of like a series of self-assessment quizzes instead of a single midterm. And so if one or two of them don't do great, well, okay, you have 6 or 7 or 8 that went fine. And so your overall grade, if you want to call it that, it's going to look pretty good. But if you blow it in your one single interview, you blew it. So I'm starting to see the benefit of these multi-minis from a grading standpoint and from being useful for you as something that will help you in the long run. So some of the schools do those, and there's really no way to practice for those except to have people give you a bunch of scenarios and you answer them, okay? They want to make sure that you are an ethical person who has empathy, who understands care and welfare and things like that. So that's the kind of person they want as a veterinarian anyway. And all y'all are like that anyway. So you're just going to answer the questions the best you can based on the scenario in front of you. If they go great, fine. If they don't, fine. You've done your best. You'll walk out of those 6 or 9 or 12 of those and go, what was that? And that's normal. Then you do a tour of the school. They'll have some seminars. They'll feed you lunch and you go home and you're like, I don't know what just happened, but that's okay. Then the fourth type of interview is the one that we do at Ohio State and many of the schools that interview will do. And this is the 2 professionals interviewing you as a candidate. Typically, one of the professionals will be a veterinarian. The other one may be a veterinarian or maybe someone who is on the staff or the faculty or doing research within the school, or you may have a senior or junior student. And you're like, oh, well, that's great. Yeah, they're kind of tough interviewers. They're looking at you as future colleagues or future employees. I love interviewing with fellow students. And I will tell you, I have had some fantastic ones. Some of my former advisees have also been my co-interviewers. And it's so much fun to be together on the same side of the table. But those of you who took 3270 with me, the scenarios on your homework commentary assignments all came out of these interviews. And some of them were with fellow students and stuff. It was really cool. So what happens in the half-hour to 45-minute, 2 interviewers, 1 person, 1 candidate kind of interview? They have a series of standard questions that they have to ask everyone. And so again, they're not going to be technique questions. They're not going to be definitions, tell me what gastrodilation and volvulus is. And you're like, I don't know. But they should be questions that everyone can answer. Typically, the first question is going to be one to get you talking. It'll be something like, what are your goals as a veterinarian? Why do you want to be a veterinarian? Again, if you have that end goal figured out, but when you start this whole process, that's no problem. I want to be in a profession where I can be a leader, I can call the shots. I want to be a problem solver. I really enjoy science and medicine. I want to do diagnosis. I want to do surgery, whatever it is. Okay. Here are my goals. Okay. This is where I'm going. They get you talking. At this point, the blotches start to go away and usually the nerves calm down a little bit. And that's what that first question is for. It's just to get you chatting. Okay. And help. You stop sweating as much. Your ears don't turn as red. You just start breathing again. And it's kind of nice. Then the second, third, fourth, usually third or fourth question, the middle questions will be scenarios. And what they're going to ask you is open-ended questions that they want you to tell them stuff. So it'll be things like, Give us an example of your leadership style. Tell us about a time when you had trouble getting along with someone and how you dealt with it. Give us an experience where you didn't have all the information but still needed to make a decision, things like that. So open-ended questions, many of them are going to focus on leadership, interpersonal skills, how you handle stress, how you deal with the unknown or surprises, things like that. And I'll get back to those in just a minute. And then the last question is usually one where they kind of let you, they let you tell more about yourself. They might say, so, you've worked in clinical practice, tell us about one of your favorite cases. Or, you've told us that you really enjoy watching equine surgery. Tell us about an interesting surgery that you saw or something like that. And so they'll get to hear more about you. They may use that last question to say something like, we've asked you a lot. What questions do you have for me or for us? Wildlife and animals. Oh, yeah, there was also a question about wildlife animals where they go in kind of the grab bag of exotic wildlife, non-domestic. Okay, so that includes zoo, that includes wildlife work, that includes, that kind of conservation work, things like that. So how do you answer those experience questions? Give us an experience when. Tell us about a time when, things like that. What you want to do is think about it like Mickey Mouse's face, okay? The first ear is a short synopsis of the situation. Keep it simple. They don't want to hear blow by blow, every little side note, he said, she said. Nutshell it. It's as big as Mickey's ear, not his whole face. His face is, what did I learn from this experience? How do I learn from my life experiences? That's what they're really interested in. And then the other ear, if you put this ear on there, they will love you, is how do I use this experience and the lesson learned as a future professional? So, if they ask any questions you have, what are examples of good questions to ask? Ooh, you can ask almost anything, to be honest. I would recommend questions that focus on the school where you're interviewing, asking them about their particular program in something, whatever it may be. NC State has some really neat programs where they're involved with sea turtles and they're involved with Tiger World. That's one of their conservation centers out there, that kind of thing. You might ask them about that. You might ask at Colorado State about their equine reproduction lab. Why do I know about that? One of my classmates runs it. Big plug for my class, yes. Okay, so, there's a variety of different things that you could ask about their school, about their program, things that you're particularly interested in. I've also had interesting questions like, what would be your recommendations for first-year vet students? How do you survive the first year? Or if you had it to do all over again, what would you do differently? Things like that. Just getting them talking. That's okay. That's kind of fun. But ask them something you're interested in. Here are things that you do not ask. So, do you think I'm going to get in? They don't know, because they don't know the rest of your sub scores and they're not going to make that judgment call. So if I don't get in, what can I do to improve my application? That's assuming you're not getting in. That's a very bad question to ask. You're assuming you're getting in. Okay, think positive. Asking about dating opportunities and social life within vet school. Oh yes, I've had that question. So most of the class is female. Are there any cute guys that end up getting accepted? Seriously, we are not a dating service. No, keep moving. So dumb crap like that, don't do that. But asking about their programs or their take on the profession, anything like that, that's fine. That's great. Yeah. Specifics about, well, how do I find housing, or, what kind of scholarship opportunity? They're not going to know. All right. That's for the housing department, or that's for financial aid or something like that. But if you focus a lot on them, their programs, it shows that you have looked into who they are and you're curious about how you're going to fit into the world that they have right there. The clinical skills lab that OSU built recently, that created a lot of questions. It's like, wow, how does that work? What do we do with that? Or the new small animal clinic, where everybody in the class rotates through that, as at different levels within that. They ask about that a lot too and stuff like that. So it's fun. Hopefully that helps. And so I'm going to give you a quick example. And I think, Sophia, I may have given you this one the other day. So one of the questions that was asked, it was on our standard question, was, tell us about a time that you had trouble getting along with someone. And immediately tell us about a time you're like, okay, what experiences are they going to be asking about? Communication, personal experience, interpersonal relations. Okay, tell us about a time that you had trouble getting along with someone and how you dealt with it. So this one young lady, she handled it beautifully. The little Mickey Mouse ear was, we were in a house of 4 people and one of our roommates was a real problem. We let it go on too long. We called in a mediator, but it was too late. We lost the roommate. We lost the friendship. Ear, that's as big as it got. Okay, I didn't hear any details. I don't care. It was her experience, not mine. She spent a lot of time, or a lot more time, on answering, here's what I learned from this. I learned that you need to intervene sooner. I learned that I need to communicate better, other things like that. And then she finished it with, as a veterinarian, if I have someone I'm having difficulty getting along with, a colleague or a coworker, I'm going to jump on it real quick and try and solve the problem early on instead of letting it fester like we did in this situation. Great. You nutshelled the experience, you told me what you learned from it, and you know how you're going to use it as a veterinarian. Wow. That was a beautiful answer. And it didn't take forever to get there. She only talked for a couple of minutes about it, but it was a thorough and complete and wonderful answer. Unfortunately, that afternoon, I interviewed the roommate. Her approach to the question was quite different. She gave us every blow by blow through the whole experience. My eyes were rolling back in my head. I don't care. That was her experience, not mine. Just, okay, move on. And then I had to ask her, what did you learn from this? And she went on quite unhappily about how, obviously even her best friend is going to stab her in the back and you can't trust anybody and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, as a veterinarian, how are you going to use this lesson? And she went on about how she was going to watch over people and put, cameras everywhere and watch her staff real closely. And I'm like, wow, you're somebody I don't want to work for. But then I told her, I said, well, it sounds like a really rough experience. I interviewed your roommate this morning. And I thought, let's see how she does with talking about a colleague. Because sometimes we're rough on colleagues, sometimes not. And she goes, oh yeah, she threw me under the bus again? I said, no, she was actually quite gracious. And that was pretty much the end of the interview, because she was absolutely carrying a grudge, furious. This is not somebody that any of you would want to work for, because she's constantly checking to see what you're doing wrong. And she doesn't trust you. Ew, right? So way too much information, icky life lesson, and not going to use it in a healthy way in the future. So we get a lot of information about people from these interview questions. One of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to share with you my little interviews tip thing. I want to see if it's going to come up. There it goes. Okay. So here are some tips that I've given over time, and hopefully this helps you guys. First, dress. And this is whether it's online or whether it's in person. Business casual, okay? Ladies, easy on the hair, makeup, jewelry, perfume, all right? If we can smell you coming down the hall, it's too much. Same thing with you guys with cologne. Oh my God. If the hair is massive and the jewelry makes noise, or you wear a tie that blinks. Yes, I've had that, where it was a blinky tie. I will make you turn it off, all right, because it's very distracting. Low heels are good, all right, because you can walk around in them. No hooker heels, no pole dancing, okay? If they're so huge and so high that you might fall and someone has to catch you, that's a really bad idea. And the whole cleavage thing, you are being interviewed by graduated veterinarians. They are not interested in your cleavage, and they never will be, okay? So don't go there. Any pop of color is fine, all right? All plain black or gray or white can be really boring. But if you wear a bright pin, or you have a bright blouse or shirt on under a suit jacket, that can really be nice, especially if it shows off the color in your face, okay? And yes, again, nothing that lights up or plays music. I've totally had that, and it's very distracting. Good eye contact, told you about Andy, way too much eye contact. No staring in the back of their brain, but don't be looking down here all the time either. Firm handshakes, if this is in person. Firm, dry handshakes. Okay, if you need to dry off your hand, do it, because nobody likes to hold a cold, wet fish. It's icky, and they'll remember that. So firm, dry handshake. You are welcome to bring with you like a little notebook or something so you can take notes, or if you have questions that you wanted to ask, it's perfectly fine. But don't bring in your laptop. That's not going to work. All right. Paper, a little notebook, something convenient in your pocket is fine. You're going to use a lot of me, myself, and I. Don't talk about they or one. So if they say, give us a time when you experienced whatever, don't say, well, I know that people do blah, 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 or what, I know people who did. I don't care. I want to know about you. So I did, I believe, I experienced. It's very uncomfortable because we're taught not to talk about ourselves, but this is one place where you have to. So you are the focus, not them. They want to talk, they want to hear about you. When asked for an example, like I said, nutshell it. What lesson did you learn and how will you use it? If you do that, they will love you. They will love you. They want to hear about you and those kinds of things. Have at least one question to ask when they say, do you have any questions? The answer is yes. There's no hesitation there. Do you have any questions for us? Yes, I do. And then ask it. At the end, always say thank you. And if they let you send an email thank you, that's great. Not all of them let you do that. So if they let you do that, that's fine. That's great. Sometimes you get handwritten ones. The weirdest one I had, the girl had pre-written her thank you notes. And then she looked at our name tags and she wrote our names in the dear so-and-so letter and folded it and handed them to us right there. And I was like, okay, that was weird. I don't know what to do with that. That was weird. Don't do that. Things that you can do to destroy your interview. Lying, crying, dying, and being crazy. They have your application. If you're going to talk about experiences in your application or your resume, make sure you talk about them the same way you did on your application. Don't change major facts because that's not good for you. Either you were lying on your application or you're lying at the interview. But if they don't go together, you got a problem. All right. Don't make stuff up. Second thing is crying or freaking out to the point where you can't compose yourself. I had somebody who literally 10 minutes into the interview started crying so bad that she said, I can't do this, and got up and left. I don't know what to do with that. There's no way to score that. It didn't go well. And that's, like I said, if it's just the one interview, it's kind of like a midterm, you kind of need to finish it. All right. Don't leave blanks. You guys know that. I talk about that. And then dying. This is ones where you skip questions. For example, I had one, this woman looked great on paper. We had 5 standard questions to ask her and she skipped the first 2. She says, yeah, I don't have anything for that. Well, each one of them is worth 20% of your interview score. And if you skip 2, the best I can give you is 60. That's a D. I can't help you if you do that. So don't skip questions. All right. Speaking really softly, mumbling, losing eye contact, yuck. What that says to the interviewer is, I don't really want to do this. Well, do you want the position in the class or don't you? If you do, you're going to make eye contact, you're going to talk to them, you're going to answer the questions. You're not going to mumble, fumble, and die. Okay. And then acting like a lunatic. I had one girl, she showed up in a wool mini dress. I mean, I swear to God, if she bent over, you could see absolutely everything. And there was no reason, don't do that. Or skin tight wool mini dress. Her little ilial wings are sticking out. And I'm like, either you have a parasite or an eating disorder. Okay. But you're scary. She had orange tights and hiking boots and a scarf. And I'm like, okay. And that's not what you wear to an interview. Don't do that. That's ew, no. And she was bouncing all over the place. She was yelling, she was slapping the table. She was just a crazy person. And I don't want that, you know, I wouldn't want my clients seeing her. I don't want to do research with this person. I don't want them in the classroom because they're going to scare people. So being a crazy person is not helpful. Had them all. Yeah. And then the other ones that just start talking and you ask the first question and they don't stop talking. It's like, it is about you, but at some point the interviewer needs to ask the next question. So lying, dying, crying, and being crazy, that will destroy your interview. I promise. Yeah. Oh, and don't cuss either. I had one person who was just like, you know, the 4-letter word, this and that all over the place. And no, that goes in the crazy. Because if you're crazy enough to do that with people who are your parents' age, bad idea. So that I wanted to share that with you guys, if that's helpful.
With all that being said, Dr. Grum, from what I've heard so far, is OSU's interviews going to be virtual? That's what I've, at least that's the impression I'm under. I don't know if there's any changes to that potentially.
We'll see what happens by January, but if they've already decided they'll probably go virtual. When you have virtual interviews, make sure that you wear something professional, at least from the neck up. This is when crazy jewelry, hair, too much makeup really does stand out horribly. So you want to be careful of that. And you want to keep making eye contact with the camera. Try and minimize distractions. So if you have a cat that likes to walk across the keyboard and do the whole tail thing, probably better to leave Kitty outside. If you have an enthusiastic puppy that's going to throw your laptop off the desk, I've had advising appointments like that. All of a sudden, whee, you know, that's not the time to have puppy in the room. If you're interviewing in bed, which is fine, just wear something appropriate on top. And your significant other is not wearing anything and gets up to go to the bathroom, that's probably not the time for them to see the full Monty. Okay. And yes, I've seen that too. Yeah. So we don't want to do that. Minimize distractions. Oh, and my God, take away controversial stuff behind you. Put in a virtual background if you need to. But if you have a Che Guevara something in the background, or, you know, so-and-so, this and that, lives matter, or whatever it is, block it, because you don't know who these people are. And they may not have your same tastes in politics or anything like that. So cover that. This is not the time to make a personal statement. Okay. This is a time to be conservative and universal. Does that make sense? Because I've seen that too, and it's not good. It's really not good. Yeah. So again, not the time for you to speak out about whatever your beliefs may be, especially if you're at one end or the other. Once you're in school, you know, you want to show off some of that, that's going to be fine, because they took you in, they know who you are, it's fine. But during the interview is not it, because once you get to the interview, it's basically between you and probably one of the next 2 or 3 people they're interviewing. You want to leave a good, positive, feel good impression, kind of that whole, I smell like vanilla and sunshine. I am making you feel good when I'm in this interview. I don't make you feel like you just heard tires screeching. Okay. Oh, and if there's a lot of noise outside, like if you have an open window with a lot of traffic, close it. They want to hear you. So minimize distractions, minimize people walking through, don't do this in a common area kind of thing. And don't get political with them. It will never play. It will never play well. So does that help?
Yes, completely. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming to speak to us this evening.
You're welcome.
We all love you so much, and for taking time out of your busy life to do it.
Well,
So
you know what my life looks like right now. Those of you who are in class with me, so you know. Does anybody have any questions that you want to, are there any other questions? Because I mean, it's already 8:15, so I don't want to take up any more of your time either.
and I'll be coming on a little later as well if anyone else has questions outside.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, is it okay if I ask a really quick question? So if this was just going back to something we talked about earlier, regarding breadth versus depth, if you're given the opportunity, if you have to choose, like I'm a sophomore and I'm kind of at the point of making a decision where I can either choose to stay at the clinic where I am now and kind of form those relationships, or branch out into something different, starting kind of back at square one. What do you recommend doing for something like that?
Right. I want you to follow your heart. All right. Follow your goal and know where you're going. And then when you look at those experiences, you be like, okay, which one is going to get me to my goal? And which one is kind of a detour that's probably not going to help me? I will tell you right now, I have a new advisee who, and one of the things I didn't tell you guys was use your internship to get experience that you haven't had before too. Use your internships to get some of that breadth, because that's a really safe time to do that. But he's already got his vet school application in, and he just got called by Dollywood down in Nashville to be the program director for her Dolly Parton Stampede. And he's done some of this kind of stuff before because he's a trick rider. He's done some of this kind of stuff before, but not so much. So he said, can I use that as my internship? He's living in Nashville for the next 3 months. And I'm like, yeah, you haven't done this before. It's more than 200 hours. And his supervisor is Dolly Parton. That's pretty cool. And she's going to sign his internship agreement form, so I'm going to have her signature. Oh my God. Anyway, not the same, but so that's totally separate from I'm going to be a veterinarian, isn't it? Not really. He's working with people. He's in a leadership position. He's doing something new that gets him involved very deeply into this experience. So is it compatible with his goals? Yes, it is. Even though it is something that's a little off the beaten path. So keep your goals in mind and then work toward those and see if your experience can help you meet those, or if you're just distracting from what you're trying to get done. Does that help?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
A couple of really good questions, more of a specified question. Alex says, why do poultry veterinarians seem so rare? Because a lot of people prefer to eat chicken than work with them. People, it's like swine veterinarians, there's a smell, or it's like, I don't want to do that. And I wish there were more poultry veterinarians, honestly, because the world is eating more chicken and turkey and everything else, and we need them badly. And they're also on the very front lines of zoonosis and other things, because chickens have a tendency to passage through a lot of the viruses that we deal with, avian influenza, a variety of other ones. So I'd like to see more, and that would be a wonderful niche to go into, because we need them. It's like lab animal veterinarians. We don't have enough. It's not very attractive. It's not sexy. And a lot of people, like I said, they prefer to eat the birds than work on them. Veterinary medicine is weird, isn't it? We're the only profession that eats our patients. A little different. Okay, if I wanted to become a traveling vet, how would I network? Ooh, first thing you do is you connect with another traveling veterinarian and find out how they did it. Social media is probably the biggest way to do it, but there are a lot of people who do that kind of thing. What would residency and education after vet school look like if I wanted to be a veterinarian at a zoo? The first thing that you would do is you would get an internship as in internal medicine, because that applies to everybody. And then you get a residency with zoo veterinarians. There's about 300 of them across the country. And then you can also go international as well. And it tends to be a one-year internship, and then a 2 to 3 year residency, depending on the zoo. Can you share how people will specialize in certain fields? Yes, and there's 3 ways to do it. One is you go out into the world as a veterinarian, you find something that you find absolutely amazing and interesting, and then you come back and pursue that. I did that. I was in general practice, then I worked in pet food industry for a while. I love nutrition. Nobody wrinkle your nose at me. I love nutrition. And so my company said, go get a PhD, we'll pay for it, and then you'll come back and work for us. And I'm like, okay. So they paid for my whole PhD program, but then they got bought and my job evaporated and I ended up at OSU, which was a great thing. But I got excited after I had been out of school for 11 years. Another way you can do it is while you're in school, you go, oh, I like this. And then you go do an internship and a residency in that. Or while you're doing what you do as a veterinarian, you just do your own kind of added education and do more of a certain thing. Maybe if you're in a practice and you like dermatology, you see most of the skin cases. Or you like cardiology, you do most of that kind of thing. So it can be casual, it can be a very formal education, or it can be a coming back and doing more later in life. So there's a lot of different paths you can take. Okay, if I do something great before vet school decisions are made, should I send an update? You can. They generally feel that your application is done when you send it in, unless you made a big mistake or you forgot a letter or something. The thing to do is at your interview is to talk about that something great. Because when they say, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? Yes, let me tell you about an experience I'm currently in, or something I added after I turned in my application. And they will definitely make note of that. And that can definitely help you out quite a bit. So hopefully that helps. Yeah, you guys have been a lovely audience, although mostly I've seen your names. And yeah, so I appreciate your attention. I appreciate your being there. And again, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming to speak. We appreciate it a lot too.
You're welcome. I'm going to leave you now because I need to go upstairs and handle some things. I'm in my basement. My husband's a beef cattle vet. You can see from behind us. That's safe. It's okay to have animal pictures. Okay, but make them non-pornographic.
Bye, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Grum.
Oh, absolutely. See y'all soon.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.